you said, quote, Trump is closer to normal than what we're seeing on the left.
Yeah, I was talking about why he won the election.
So?
When I made that statement, I was talking about, that was before the election.
I see.
Right?
Okay.
So during the election, I said, in the immediate aftermath of the election, I pointed out he was voted for because they considered him closer to normal than what the Democrats were spewing. That was what I said at that particular.
You said, quote, Trump is closer to normal than what we're seeing on the left. Yeah, I was talking about why he won the election when I made that statement. I was talking about that was before the election. I see, right? So when during the election I said in the immediate aftermath of the election, I pointed out he was voted for because they considered him closer to normal than what the Democrats were spewing. That was what I said at that particular moment. In time, Stephen A.Smith just did what he does best, and this time it was Sonny Hostin who found herself on the receiving end of his response. The conversation started off as a simple debate, but it quickly turned into a heated exchange that left the View panel completely stunned. So what exactly did Stephen say that had Sonny struggling to keep her composure? Well, let's just say he wasn't about to let her push a one-sided opinion without clapping back. It all started with a simple discussion, but when Stephen Smith speaks you better be ready. And Sonny, well, she wasn't ready at all. I don't understand how people can look at that and say there's no mandate. There's a mandate. Well, it's a different definition of a mandate, I guess, but the problem is that if you're the Democratic Party and you lost 49.8% to 48.3% and you're looking at that 1.5% dip, that's an excuse for you to say what we did really wasn't that bad. We should continue to do that. The View panel had gathered around their usual hot topics, and this time they were knee-deep in a heated debate over a controversial political issue. As always, Sonny Hostin was ready to dominate the conversation. Her argument was built around what she saw as undeniable facts, a perspective that seemed bulletproof. And for a moment the panel nodded along, but sitting just across from her was Stephen Smith. While Sonny spoke, he didn't interrupt, he didn't even flinch. Instead he sat there calmly taking in every word, letting her finish her point. And that's the thing about Stephen: when he waits, it's never because he's unsure of what to say, it's because he's making sure he's about to say it exactly at the right time. Black men, we revere women, we don't have any problem looking at a woman as a leader. Stephen is a master at using cold hard facts to break down arguments, and this time was no different. He started by questioning the core of Sonny's argument, poking holes in the reasoning she had just presented. While she had leaned heavily on emotion and generalization, Stephen came armed with statistics, historical context, and examples that proved her wrong. The moment he started listing off facts, the rest of the panel fell silent. You could almost see the realization settling in. This wasn't going to be an easy rebuttal for Sonny Host. And the best part, he wasn't even angry. He didn't raise his voice or lose his composure. Instead, he delivered his points in the same way that makes him such a strong debater. Sonny, who had been so sure of her position just moments before, started to shift uncomfortably in her seat. She tried to counter his points, but it was clear she wasn't expecting this sort of pushback. At one point she even interrupted, attempting to drive the conversation back in her favor, but Stephen wasn't having it. He quickly reminded her that she had her time to speak, and now it was his turn. By this point the rest of the panel was just watching the back and forth. Sonny was suddenly on the defensive end. The debate that she thought she had won just minutes earlier had completely flipped on its head. But Stephen wasn't done yet. You're saying it's ridiculous. I don't disagree with you, but most of the voters out there don't think like that. That means they don't have the information, okay? But 90% of the voters don't have the information at this point. Sonny realized she was in trouble, and when you can't win with logic, what do? You get emotional. Her voice started to rise as she interrupted Stephen mid-sentence. She wasn't letting him finish his points anymore. Every time he tried to speak she jumped in, talking over him, trying to steer the conversation away from the facts he had just laid out. This wasn't the Sonny Hostin that viewers were used to. This was Sonny who knew she was losing when logic wasn't working in her favor. She turned to personal attacks. She started questioning Stephen's credibility, trying to paint him as someone who was just doing this for attention. But Stephen wasn't fazed. He had seen this before. He knew exactly what was happening. When someone runs out of facts, they turn to deflection, and that's when Sonny made her biggest mistake. She doubled down. Instead of backing off, she started ranting, throwing in emotional statements that weren't even relevant to the discussion anymore. It was clear she wasn't debating, she was just trying to save her face. But Stephen wasn't letting her off the hook. He let Sonny finish her rant, and when she finally paused, Stephen leaned forward, looked her straight in the eye, and said, "Sonny, you can keep raising your voice, but that doesn't make you right. You could hear a pin-drop silence in the studio. Sunny host had nothing left. She was stuck. The rest of the panel weren't rushing to save her. Joy Behar glanced away, avoiding eye contact. Whoopi shifted in her seat as if she was debating whether she should step in or just let it happen. The other hosts stayed quiet, watching it unfold like everyone else, because here's the thing: when Steven destroys an argument, he doesn't just beat you, he leaves you no way out. Sunny tried one last time to recover, mumbling something about how this isn't about numbers, it's about feelings, but at that point the damage was done. Steven leaned back and let the silence do the rest. The debate was over and everybody in that room knew it. You're never going to convince the ladies of The View, you're never going to convince this party to stop. They had a chance to stand up for women's sports last week, they didn't do it. They have a chance to stand against for the safety of Americans over the rights of illegals. They're not going to do it. They're going to shut down the government or to shut it down this week. That's your party. Stephen A. It's been radicalized. The internet wasted no time reacting to this epic takedown, and let me tell you, the comments were priceless. Some folks were just laughing at how Stephen handled the debate, while others pointed out the hypocrisy of The View when it comes to handling different opinions. One user on Twitter wrote, "Stephen A.Smith just gave Sunny host a free lesson on how facts work." Hoped she was taking notes. Even some big-name personalities jumped in. One famous sports commentator tweeted, "Sunny just learned what happens when you try to argue with a man who deals in facts." But it wasn't just about Stevens. When people were calling out The View itself, a major complaint was how the show always tries to shut down opposing opinions unless those opinions come from someone they agree with. People were quick to point out when Whoopi or Joy Behar speak, they get full uninterrupted time to express their views, but when a guest or co-host brings up facts that challenge the panel's narrative, they get cut off, interrupted, or ignored. Stephen Smith didn't let that happen, and that's why the moment was so satisfying for viewers. One user stated, "The View wanted Stephen on their show, but they weren't ready for a real debate. They're used to controlling the conversation and he flipped the script." Another viewer commented, "If you can't handle different opinions, why do you invite people like Stephen? This is why no one takes The View seriously anymore." And let's be real, this moment wasn't even about personalities, it was about facts versus emotions, and Stephen Smith came with the receipts. So what did we learn today? If you're going to debate with him, you better come prepared or you'll end up like Sunny, speechless and embarrassed on national TV. This showdown exposed a lot, not just about Sunny, but about how The View operates. People are tired of seeing one-sided conversations, and Stephen A. Smith proved why strong debate skills matter. But now I want to hear from you. Do you guys think Stephen went too far, or was he just speaking facts? Should The View bring in more strong voices like him, or should they stick to the usual panel? Leave your thoughts in the comments and subscribe this channel for more.